What up, what up, what up? It's your man Sean P coming in live with another live experience here on YouTube. I have a very amazing guest. I'm so excited. Total fan moment, which is rare on a show. I have the amazing Zaza Ali right here in the building. How you doing today?
Peace and love, King. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Love to your audience and everybody that tunes in.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's gonna be a banger. It's gonna be a banger. So let me do your official introduction.
Mhm.
Today on Cinema with the Griot, I am joined by the powerful voice now community, public speaker, multi self-published author, avid researcher, and lover of all things connected to the source. She is a life coach who guides us through deeper conversations on health, well-being, love, and truth. Her groundbreaking work, Defining for Self, challenges us to take ownership of our minds, our spirits, and our future. Family, please welcome the incomparable Zaza.
Thank you so much. I received that, and I
Yes, ma'am.
appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So I'm gonna start with an icebreaker. So following your page for a while, I know you love martial arts. I know you love martial arts. So the first thing
Wait, I'm
is
sorry. You said I love what?
martial arts.
It's something with your sound. It was clear before, and then it happened again. Can you hear me? Okay, let me ask you that.
I can.
Okay.
Yes.
Ask the people in your chat room, and I'll ask in my on. What's up, y'all in the chat room? Can you guys hear his microphone? Okay, because it sounds a little muffled. When you came back in, it was good, and now it feels. I'm struggling to hear you.
Check.
On StreamYard, it's the audio sometimes is a little weird. Say that again.
Check.
Okay, that's much better.
Check.
Yes.
Hey, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
I think Stream, y'all playing with me. Let me step out and step back in.
Okay. All right, so I guess I should just take over the show then. Welcome to Sitting with the Griots featuring Zaza Ali. My brother Sean should be coming back in just a second here. But shout out to all of my people on Instagram. Yes, okay.
I'm good?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. So I was saying, following your page, I know you love martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your favorite martial arts film?
That's a great question. This is a great question to start this interview off with. Ask me about something I actually like. I'm kidding, but my favorite is definitely Ip Man. I am a serious Ip Man fan. I have watched that series 1,000 times, but I also really like Umbak. Okay, yes. So Umbak is my guy too. It's between those two, and then I'm also a big fan of the old school martial arts films, kung fu films. We didn't call it martial arts, we called it kung fu. But yeah, Ip Man is definitely my number one.
Yeah, so am I. I've been an avid fan since like 3 years old. Always loved martial arts, getting involved in it. Have you studied actual martial arts yourself?
I did Muay Thai for a couple of years when I was in Atlanta, and I really, really liked it. I honestly think I was like a samurai or something in another lifetime. There's this thing there that I have, but I've wanted to practice and study Wing Chun as well. Maybe when my life slows down and I can really just do what I really want to do, I'll probably for sure take up some form of martial arts consistently. Somebody in my chat room said, I'm clear, but there's an echo on your end. A couple of people said that.
I'm trying to get the sound right on this guy. It never normally happens. It's crazy.
Okay.
Good old technology. You never know.
Let me mute myself and then you talk and see what happens. Because sometimes in my book club meetings, I'm gonna mute right now and then you talk and see if it clears up.
So you mentioned martial arts. You mentioned Wing Chun. I've been taking Wing Chun for like 6-7 years now. So whenever you can do it, I think you would enjoy the art of Wing Chun.
So I'm gonna have to remember that because you come across clear when my mic is muted. When I'm doing my book club meetings, sometimes that happen. I actually think it's the settings in your audio, but that's another conversation for another time. But yeah, the feminine aspect of Wing Chun, and the backdrop of the story of it definitely was a lot more compelling to me as well. So yeah, eventually I'll probably tap into that as well as Tai Chi. I have a lot of stuff that I really want to explore and study. So yeah.
Thank you very, very much for that icebreaker. So, going into your origin story, right? Coming off of martial arts, there's always an origin story to the teacher. So, what's the spark that shifted you on the path to seeking truth, prioritizing wellness, and eventually going into the role of a teacher and a guide to others?
Growing up in Oakland, um, I saw. First of all, my dad put me in an all black private school, and from pre K up until the fifth grade, I was in an incubator of black consciousness and knowledge, and so that's kind of where my love for knowledge sort of sparked. But then also coming, seeing the change and the devolution, not evolution, but the devolving of my city, going from a bustling, predominantly black culture and city to being ripped apart by crack cocaine, really had a profound effect on me because crack had a big impact on my family. And so I can remember at the age of 11 and 12 where I was like, what happened? I was like really paying attention to what was going on around me and trying to figure out how did we go from that extreme to this extreme. So I, at a very young age, I can just remember questioning things and focusing on things that were way beyond my years, and then always having a very strong love and drive for reading and for knowledge, which I know your show is set up around. And then when I turned 17, I read Message to the Black Man in America. I read Nile Valley Contribution to Civilization. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I just went on this tangent. I was seeing a guy that was an FOI at the time, and he was also like super intellectual. And so I just went off on this tangent of just like reading all these books, Asada Shakur, and it just opened my eyes and opened me up to what was really going on in the world. So definitely crack cocaine had a very significant impact on my life because I was very cognizant of what the change, the before and after. And then also, when I hit that 17, 18-year-old range and I started really, really reading, and I was like, oh yeah, this is it. Like I want to be in this group. I want to be, everybody want to be the cool kids or the popular kids. Like, nah, I want to be with the intelligent, you know what I mean? Where the intelligence is, where people are talking about things that make your mind feel, alive and expansive.
Man, thank you very, very much for that. Yes, Dr. Wade in the chat just said it. Wow, at a young age. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us coming to this game in our 20s and our 30s, you come across it, how you come across it, but at a young age, getting into that work, that's an amazing advantage. So my question is, what keeps you grounded and committed today? Because being a teacher, it could be a lot of opposition, it could be a lot of roadblocks. What keeps you motivated and going despite the roadblocks?
God, and I know for a lot of people listening to this, our perspective on what God is probably a lot different. Somebody is probably in their head right now arguing the term, right? Oh, God is dog backwards. This, it depends on what perspective you're coming from, right? But the if we talk about the universe being mental, and it is because everything is mental, and that initial thirst and quest for knowledge and just to soak up as much as I possibly could and to have an understanding. I always wanted to get to the root of things, even at a young age. I did. And then you evolve, right? After I went on this tangent for reading, and then I went to college and I did like 2 extra years that I didn't even as taking classes that didn't have anything to do with what I was what I was majoring in because I was just trying to figure out, how do white people take over the world? That was my a very strong, like, I needed to understand it. How did we get to the point where the world got to where it is now? And so I just went on a binge, a tangent when I was in college studying. I was battling my professors. I was bringing books in my classes, my art classes, my history classes, my Greek philosophy classes. Like, I made everything Black. In my Greek philosophy classes, I made my papers. I remember we had to write a 12-page paper on a specific Greek philosopher, and I said, well, can I asked my teacher. She was in a wheelchair too. I asked her if I could talk about the impact that Egyptian or Kemetic culture had on Greco-Roman culture, right? And so she's thinking, she's like, yeah, okay, sure. She's not really understand. I guess she didn't understand the depths of what I was asking. Oh, and I just wrote the whole paper about how we taught them everything that they knew, and the reason that Greek philosophy doesn't make any sense is because they didn't have the codes to unlock the wisdom that the pharaohs gave, some of the wisdom that the pharaohs gave them, right? And so that was, that college part was like really important because it gave me the courage to like really start confronting, truth and confronting people in positions of authority. One of my professors in my Black Studies classes, Lawrence Van Hook, we would, because I was going to his night class. After the class was over, it was a 3-hour class. I would have the other students in the class would be like gathering around my desk asking me questions because I was already so like well versed in Black studies, Black history, and just history, period. So I would have people around my desk like asking me questions like I'm the teacher, My professor, Reverend Robert McKnight, he took a very fond liking to me. And he would have me come in and substitute his classes. So that was another thing. I think I'm going back to your first question, but to your current question, what keeps me grounded today? So I brought all of that up because for a long time, my focus was Black people, right? It was us. It was trying to figure out, it was trying to, help lift us up. It was trying to like get us out of the condition that I saw us in, that I saw in my family. And then I realized how recalcitrant, how, the lack of interest in knowledge and information and reading, the mediocrity that, what I mean? It was just a lot of stuff. And then, of course, the social media world, and I got pulled into this and pulled into that. And I was just like, this is too much. And I realized that, you can get to a point where you do 1,000 good things and you do one thing that's wrong or that upsets people or that, makes people feel some type of way. And they forget about all the good things that you did. And it really, really, really like it hurt. You know what I mean? Because at that point, I had cooperative economics support our schools. I was raising money for African Center schools. I had, support Black businesses, cooperative economics. I was raising money for Black businesses. I had Sister Cipher support group, right? So I'm doing major work that I'm not getting paid for to assist with the greater good. And then when the ish hits the fan in terms of like the blowback on me, I saw that I wasn't really getting the type of reciprocity from the culture and from the community that I expected, right? And so I had to stop and pull back and be like, okay, wait a minute, what am I doing here? And I never had the savior complex. I never was like trying to save people, but I was way more focused on taking care of the culture and contributing to the culture than I was myself, right? And so in that retreating and in that sort of pivoting in my perspective, I was like, wait a minute, I got to focus on me. I got to make sure that I'm mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically grounded to deal with this. Not just what it comes with, leadership in the Black community, but what I knew was what was going on in the world. Just like what I know now, the things, where we're operating in context with what's actually happening in the world is mind blowing to me, right? And so I was like, okay, I got to fortify myself so that regardless to whom or what, me and my son and the people in my tribe are going to be good. And the best way for me to do that is to focus internally. And so through that, that period and those experiences, I was really, really able to like be still, go within myself, see all of my flaws, see all of my, things my trauma, right? My abandonment issues and neglect issues from my childhood. Eventually, you have to do that. And you have to make that your primary focus. And if you don't, eventually it's going to come to the surface. It's going to come to the surface in your relationship. It's going to come to the surface as a parent. It's going to come to the surface as a business owner, or whatever. So I had to hone in and do that. And then when 2020 hit, and all the stuff that I had been studying and researching for 20 years was smack dab in my face, then it was really like, oh, wow. Satan has come from behind the closet. But not only has Satan come from behind the closet, but I knew. You know what I mean? Like, I knew the trajectory of my research, Black Matters, the Scientific Intervention in Our Affairs. I was talking about the technology that's in the shot that two people started taking in 2021. I was talking about the technology that they eventually used to create that back in 2015. So it was also like a major moment for me where it was like, oh, wow, God has really placed a major, goal on my life, if you will. And so all of that, plus yoga, plus, fasting, plus being a mom, right, and wanting to make sure that I leave a lasting legacy, an imprint on my son. I care a lot. You know what I mean? I care so much about what's going on in the world. And so even though I had to like push back and kind of focus on myself, that caring, that compassion, that intention to add value never left me. It just switched gears, right? And so even like now, my most recent book, Ancient People, a Social Studies and History textbook, the initial intention behind that book was to inspire people to homeschool. You got to get your children out of these schools. This is what I was saying, but I was also, trying to give people resources and whatnot. And I was like, I wonder, I had always planned on writing a textbook, but I was like, can I do a curriculum? So I sat down from scratch. I had no previous knowledge. I'm looking at and I remembered the textbooks in my history classes, and I hated them. I hated the way they looked. They made our people look. They made the men look docile. They made the women look like sexy winch type vibes. You know what I mean? And so I didn't like it. And I remembered that. And so the inspiration from 2020, wanting to inspire people to homeschool, and then also the frustration of knowing that our history was being taken and lied and all of this stuff. Every culture that I put in that book is a culture that I had already researched over the last 20 years, So all of those things, the culmination of all of those things, and I'm pretty sure at this point that I'm a scribe, right? And I'm saying scribe because I know I'm a writer, I know I'm an author, but when I think scribe, I think of ancient days. I think of, Imhotep and these wonderful, powerful, magnetic, the Kabbalion, these powerful minds that left a legacy that we're still studying and like growing from today. I was like, yeah, that's my job. I'm a keeper of knowledge. I'm an alchemist. I've been saying, this is a little joke, but it's not really a joke. So like Senmet, who was Hatshepsut's, he was an architect. He was he had like 80 titles of different things that he did, right? Hatshepsut had like 10 or 15. And so, and a lot of the ancient kings and queens and great people, they would have all of these different titles that they would give themselves, like the wanderer or the I'm making that up, but so I've started to give myself some titles, and the scribe is definitely one of them. The alchemist, the incense whisperer, the scientist. What else? The keeper of knowledge. There's like 2 or 3 more, but eventually I'm going to create like a crest, the Zaza Ali crest, which if you know about Moorish Spain, you know what a crest is, right? A family crest. Eventually I'm going to create a crest that embodies all of those things. But back to your original question. So knowledge, researching, adding value to all spaces, being of service to the world in a way that complements me and who I authentically am, and doing God's work and doing God's will. And when I say God, I'm talking about the higher self. the higher self in me, the higher self in you, and the mental, universe and the mind that is keeping this whole thing sort of active and moving. That's what I mean when I say God. So in service of God means creation, it means expansion, it means the mental realm, it means energy and vibration, it means consciousness, it means all of those things, and that's what I'm here to serve and to embody.
So, one of my normal opening questions, this is the Sitting with the Griot podcast. I ask my guests, how do you feel about taking on that moniker of being the griot, or for the ladies, the griotes, the ancient storytellers, the keeper of the tales? And I normally ask, do you feel any kind of pressure carrying that weight? How do you feel about that title?
I actually don't. That's why I know I'm on my path, because I had all my books laid out on the table the other day, and I was going to do a video. I didn't get a chance to do it because I was multitasking, and I am going to do the video. And with the inspiration of the quest for greatness, right? I didn't set out to write 7 books. I just Everybody's like, you should write, you should write, you should write, and I knew I was a good writer, but I was more so focused on the information. I wasn't trying to like put together although I could and probably will eventually, put together a book that is like beautiful writing and expression and whatnot. Eventually I'm going to do that, but that wasn't my intention. My content is very like information, data, focused and based, right? And so, but it's just so natural to me. I'm surrounded by books. If you could see this room that I'm in right now, I have books on my left, I have books in front of me, I've got books over there. I have a very fond affinity and love for knowledge. And so for me as a griot, that's another one, I got to remember that. No, I don't feel any pressure. I feel blessed that God has given me the ability to write, and God has instilled in my heart a passion for knowledge and for relaying, transmuting information. I feel like I'm really good at transmuting complex things and helping people to understand complex things. So no, I don't feel any pressure at all.
And I want to give the family a little bit of backdrop of what you mean to me in my world. You mentioned Black Matters, right? Your first book. So during my master program, the last project to graduate, I used Black Matters for my last project when it comes to talking about the lead in the paint. And at the time, you had the Freddie Gray case. So with the Freddie Gray case, come to find out, he had high levels of lead in his blood. And for those that don't know, it caused you to have very erratic behavior, right? So I was speaking about the behavior of our community sometimes, how it's perceived by the police, but ultimately we are the victim of these projects and these ghettos, if you will, right? Housing authorities. So I did that with Black Matters. I love quoting our scholars. All of my college work, I'm using your work, Dr. Supreme Understanding, Dr. Naeem Akbar. I'm a psychology major. So all of my papers, I'm quoting our psychologists and our thinkers, right? And then whenever I taught college myself during the pandemic, I used your Science of Self book, talking about that today, Science of Self, in my classroom. I used your book about the science of sex in my classroom. And so I really, really use these tools in real time. And we'll get into a little bit later as to how you make it easy to do that, the way you format the book, the way you lay it out. It's easy for a teaching tool for anybody on the channel that want to homeschool or whatever you're doing. I want to give you that props online, in your face.
Yeah, I received that, and you see, I'm smiling like a Chelsea cat. I'm trying not to show too many teeth. You gotta be composed. You know what I mean? When you smile, and. But I'm kidding. But yeah, I really appreciate that, and that really, man, I can't tell you how much that really touches my heart, because if I told you how many people have tried to, maybe intentionally or not intentionally, like discourage me from writing books, Black people don't read, that sentiment, which is a very negative prophecy for us to continue to project on ourselves. I don't know why we do that. I know why, but your point about the lead and what I talked about in the book, Chicago in particular, right? There's a lot of the lead, and then also the condition of the piping systems there, right, creates rust in a form of lead, or lead variation, if you will. um, in the pipes. And when I'm reading this, I'm like, yeah. And then you find out that the in ancient Rome, well, Rome wasn't ancient, but in Rome during war times, they would give their soldiers aluminum, not like give them aluminum, but they would lace the food with aluminum to make them more vicious and violent, right? And it's like, wait a minute, we cook with aluminum pans. We use aluminum foil in our ovens, right? And then not to mention, you start looking at, which I also talked about, the mercury in the fillings, and the mercury, and if mercury is at a certain temperature, that it melts in it's always melting in your teeth, right? And so there's this constant influx of this toxicity in your bloodstream. So I'm looking at all of these things, and then I'm looking at Oakland, I'm looking at LA. And the crack cocaine thing, really, when I cracked the code on that and saw, because I was like, there's no way some random street dudes just went in the kitchen and figured out how to mix cocaine and baking soda, and now all of a sudden they're creating a drug that has completely decimated the Black community all over America, and it only stays in the Black community. You notice crack never billowed out into the Latinos or whites or whatever. So I was like, nah, there's something to this. I start studying melanin and find out that melanin is a binding compound, right? Binding compound, which means that if the body accepts whatever the substance is, melanin is going to bind to it and basically bring it in full, throttle into the system. So once I found out about this, there was in Peru, bazooka paste. They found this paste where these people were taking this drug that was like, it had the bazooka paste from this tree, but then it also had like some gasoline elements. It had all these weird concoctions. But rich people, poor people, melanated people, because obviously this is a heavily melanated environment, they were having the exact same effects as crack cocaine. So they started sending scientists from Stanford, scientists from all of the great colleges and universities across America out here to study this compound. And then a few years later, the Bahamas, all of a sudden, crack cocaine, predominantly Black, melanated people, all of a sudden, crack cocaine shows up in the Bahamas first before it was in the Bay Area. So then, now mind you, this is not public knowledge. This was Michael Rappaport wrote several very detailed. He was a former. He was either in the FBI or the CIA. Don't quote me because it's been like 10 years since I've been in this research. But it is in my book. He was, he basically came out and gave it all up before they killed him, and he said that, he gave me the resources I needed to go and find out what happened in the Bahamas. So then I saw that crack was in the Bahamas first. They experimented with there. And then all of a sudden it shows up in Oakland. So Oakland was a target city for crack cocaine. And in Behold a Pale Horse, William Cooper said that the intention for crack cocaine was to destroy 2 to 3 generations of Black men. So you have the impact that it had in terms of what it did to the whole culture, not just Black men, but all of us. But then the other part of that was how many brothers ended up incarcerated and how many men are still incarcerated now, maybe not from that original crack cocaine charge, but probably because, they had a charge and then got out and then, got another charge, and because they had a previous charge and now they're doing double time and all of that stuff. So, yeah, the lead aspect, the crack cocaine, the liquor, right? You can go in the store and get a bottle of 40 this big for $2, but oranges cost, you know what I mean? Like, I was just looking at all of this stuff, very young age. Naeem Akbar is one of my I have studied his work extensively. For sure. And so he's had a very profound impact on me. So the science of sex, the science of self, all of these workbooks were all things that I feel like we need to know. And I didn't want to just be writing books. I want to write the content, but then you got to put the work in. We are too lazy. We've gotten mediocre when it comes to like taking care of ourselves. We'll go in the gym and for our physical fitness, some of us, not all of us, but hopefully more than not. When it comes to a job or like getting licensing or business and things like that, we're all tapped in because that's the modus operandi in this world. But when it comes to like fine tuning your mind, being mentally focused, your emotional well being, spirituality, we're not really tapped into that. And I know because I've got partnerships with a lot of black bookstores around the country. They're not really into the workbooks. They're into the books. But the workbooks and the metaphysics conversation and spirituality talk, they're not really focused on that. I know because I've had these conversations for 10 years now. So that's why I'm like, okay, so we're not focused in that direction. That means I really need to focus in that direction because that's where we fall the most short. We don't understand consciousness creates reality. We don't understand energy and vibration. We don't understand the way you think, the way you feel, the way you eat, the way you live, the way you breathe is what's actually creating your reality. That dude that you had a baby by, or that chick that broke your heart, or the job that the guy was, micromanaging you and fired you, or you keep getting fired, you can't keep a job, or you always late, or you keep having car accidents, or all of it is based on your vibrational resonance and how you're moving in the world. And so I'm very happy when you tell me that you use the books for your college thesis in your classes and whatnot. That gives me so much joy. I have the Marcus Garvey School here in LA has the 5th grade class has my ancient people textbook. And a few months earlier this year, I went to see the kids. I got pictures. I never posted them or anything, but I went to see them. And, you're not thinking 5th graders are going to be super excited. Mind you, this is an advanced book for 5th graders, right? But the brother who teaches the class is my guy. So we did a fundraiser in my membership channel and we were able to get the books to the students. But it was so dope how they were like so excited to meet me. You wrote that book? Oh my God. And they were like, you know what I mean? And I'm not thinking they're going to be interested in me like that. Maybe if they know me from social media, but the fact like they're just excited to meet me and to see me because I wrote a book, it was such a wonderful experience. So yeah, I and the Freddie Gray, I mean, imagine how many Freddie Grays, you talk about the erratic behavior, our sons and daughters not being able to sit still in the classrooms. I would have talked about fluorescent lighting and the lighting in the school system if I had known that at that time. I really want to go back and do a volume 2 because book could be 3 times the size as it was. But the fluorescent lighting in the classrooms, right? All of these things are affecting the behaviors of our children. So I went around the mountain across the street, pardon me, but I hope I answered your question.
No. Hey, I'm loving my time. Give it all to my audience. Give it to us. Give it to us, right? So the science itself is more than just words on the page. It is interactive. You got spaces to write. You got charts, graphs, exercises. So why do you feel the participation is so important in your work compared to traditional book format?
There is a word. I know you've heard this before. Edutainment, right? Where we think that we have to entertain our people to educate them. And there's a time and a place for that, right? There is, poetry is a great way of doing that, right? There's a time and a place for that. But sometimes we just need to be educated. Sometimes we need to just focus on knowledge and information. And the knowledge seeking is a big deal for me because I was always a knowledge seeker, and I've started going in the world and realizing like, yeah, everybody ain't seeking knowledge. They'll read the book if it's for on the syllabus, or if it's something particular to what they're going through. But like to actually be a seeker of knowledge and be out in the world and realizing like, man, there's not a lot of us out here, right? So the participatory intention of the workbooks is about, we talk about the science of self, the magnetism, for instance, the quote in there from The Power of the Subconscious Mind, where he talks about, not manifest, but how to be magnetic, right, in order to attract things and experiences and whatnot. It's like him saying that is one thing. You stepping back and pondering, okay, what am I magnetizing towards me? What is the history of my life experiences, and what, how am I operating in the world, and how is this showing up in real time for me? So that's really like what I wanted to people to not just read the information, because I've read so many books. I've read so many great minds. I also got to a point where I couldn't read any books. Nothing was sticking to my ribs. And that's when I say knowledge of self is different than knowledge of yourself. That's why I always say that, because I went for like a year and a half where I just couldn't read books. Nothing was sticking. Nothing. I'm talking about spirituality, history, metaphysics, nothing. My mind was like, psh. And it was because it was a time for me to study myself. So knowledge of self is the books, right? Knowledge of yourself is the participatory part of the workbooks, and the intention of the participatory part of the workbooks, because you actually have to do the work. You actually have to care about how you feel. You actually have to care about how you treat people, what energetic footprint you're leaving in the world. So much of what we grapple with, and so much, hold on, let me take somebody out of my chat room. I have a bot or something. Let me see. Pardon me. I know that's not a good rhythm, but it's throwing me off seeing these comments.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Yes, and let me block you, Ahmed, Imad, whatever your name is. I think you might have taken me off live. What was I saying? Because I think it just dropped my live. Tell me, remind me what point I was at.
But we're talking about the power of doing the self-work and doing the interactive part of the workbook.
So the participatory part, and now I can hear myself. The participatory part is about doing the work and about being internally focused. What was I saying? Because I think it just dropped my live. I'm sorry. So remind me what point I was at.
But we're talking about the power of doing the self-work and doing the interactive part of the workbook.
So the participatory part. I'm trying to close this out. I don't want to end the live. The participatory part is about doing. I'm not going to do that. So the participatory part is about, here's the great minds, here's what they said, here's what they think, and now you need to do the work. Otherwise, you are just reading another book and retaining the information. How does this actually apply to your life? Is this going to add value to you? You know, that type of thing. Not just because there's this laziness, and it's not just our people. Trust me, it's not just our people. It's it's kind of ingrained in American culture in particular, where there's no seeking of knowledge. There's no seeking of like being better, being greater. So that's what the whole premise behind the workbooks is.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. In the science itself, you speak about the detox, the importance of both physically and mentally detoxing. In the world where people are attached to their devices from the moment they wake up until they go to bed at night, everything is so ingrained with electronics. How do you advise a person today to start detaching from that and start getting back to that inner voice, inner self? People are so inundated, so many things.
You have to decide. You have to. This is why I say, like, when you're tapped in with yourself, you can tell what makes your energy shift, what makes you feel alive and vibrant and good about yourself versus what makes you feel stressed out and and worried and all of those different things. And so you got to be conscientious about how social media is impacting you. I think for women in particular and girls, there is a very strong current of insecurity because we're all kind of seeing all of the other females and they look like they're perfect, or they're, in Dubai and Greece every other day, right? So it's like, it makes you look at your life and feel like there's something missing, or there is lack, or, you don't have what you don't have, emphasizing those things. But when you go out into the real world, The world is just operating normally, right? It's not keeping track of what you're doing and what you're not doing. When you're online comparing and contrasting with other people, you're keeping track of what you're not doing or where you're falling short or where you think you're falling short. So because I'm a big nature lover, I'm a tree hugger. For me, even before we did this, before I sat down to do this interview, I went outside and just sat in the grass and put my feet in the grass for like 20 minutes. Of course, I got bit up by like 30 mosquitoes, but it was worth it, right? But by monitoring yourself, how do you want to feel? How do you want to show up? How do you want to live? And how is this affecting you, first of all? Because you got to be conscientious of yourself. A lot of people they really, really, really lack self-awareness. If I could, man, that self-awareness thing is like so critical, and it's one of the most important, things that we need to be mindful of. And so many of us are not mindful and conscientious of that at all. So when you have the self-awareness, you can use social media and the internet as a tool, right? To learn, to connect, to socialize, to promote your business, to put out a good word, whatever your intention is. But at the same time, this is a world inside of a phone and a computer. When I'm not on it, what is it? When I'm not on Instagram, what is it? When my phone is off, you see, we go from here to here. What is it now? It's not even there, right? And I know it's still there, but I'm saying all of that to say, if we came here to create, which we did, if we came here to master emotions, which we did, if we came here to learn how to love, which we did, if we came here to, for me, being a scribe, being a griot, being a researcher, which I did, right? Master something. You know what I mean? Be great at something. Discover something. Figure something out. Wander. I'm a wanderer. And I don't just mean that in real time, like I'm just outside wandering, but like, nah, I'm a wanderer. I feel like I'm meant to explore this world, right? Wander, ponder. You know what I mean? Consider what's happening in the world, considering how you affect other people, consider self-awareness. And those things are just not happening online. You can get inspiration from the internet. You can watch other people's stories through the internet, but there's a lot of life to be lived, and you can't live it through the internet. You can share it through the internet, but you can't live it through the internet. And the levels of depression, the levels of suicide, the levels of stress and anxiety and suffering that are happening in the world. I saw a Palestinian video the other day, just randomly came up in my feed. Somebody I don't even follow, mind you. And if they were trying to censor it, they could censor it, because they censored me for a year and a half. But so they want people to know. So I'm just scrolling, and then randomly I just see this video, and just like this bomb just like blows up. First it was a college. No, first it was a hospital. Then it was a university. And they were talking about how no more universities exist in Palestine now. But when I tell you, I'm just randomly scrolling, I'm not thinking about anything, and all of a sudden I'm watching war in real time, right? So they magnetize their impact through fear. Those type of things keep us locked in that fear-based frequency. I didn't come online for that. Now, I do a headline news episode on my membership channel, and when I do it, I'm tapping in with everything going on there, what's happening in the world, all of those things. But if I'm not in the mindset to take that kind of content and information in, I'm not doing it. Because, again, consciousness creates reality. If they can keep you locked in a fear-based frequency, you will stay there, and you will attract a mate and a relationship and an experience and a job and a circumstance that will resonate with that. So, and you can't hear with the louder it is. There's so much noise on the internet. The louder the world is, the harder it is for you to hear your inner voice. The louder the world is, the harder it is for you to hear your inner voice. So I have to be off of social media sometimes so I can make sure that that inner voice is strong, that God can speak to me and through me at any moment, right? At any time. So when it gets too loud, I tap out. So that's, again, we're here to explore and have lives that are deep and that are substantial and that have value. Get off the internet when you need to get off the internet consistently and go tap in with nature. Plus the EMF waves from the phone, the screen, the blue light and lighting and the impact on your eyes, like the radiation, right? All that. All the brothers should know you should not be carrying your cell phone in your pocket or sitting it in your lap. All the women should know you shouldn't have your phone in your bra. I be seeing women out in the world, and it takes everything in me to be like, sis, please. But at one point I would have did that. Now you gotta let people be who they are. You never know how somebody might react. But yeah, it's just balance. I say balance, the balance of indulgence and discipline in everything. As long as you can find a middle ground in that, that's the goal. That's the key.
I want to talk about one of my favorite chapters in the book, and I taught this in class. It's the science of emotions, and I love how you broke down like all the different hormones, right? Serotonin, cortisol, all these different things. But like, I wanted my class to understand. People say phrases like "I feel some kind of way" or "in my feels," but they don't understand the food, drinks, or different things in the environment that cause you to have a spike or depletion in your hormones. And this is why you actually feel like it's not like happenstance or random. I want them to understand what it was and how you go about purposely manipulating it for your benefit, right? So talk about like the importance of that section of the book and why you broke down every hormone the way you did.
That's a great question, and I'm very happy that you asked that. One of the first things in my Keys to Womanhood workbook, which do I have it? Yes, I do. I have a whole section in there where I just dropped my books. I have a whole section in there where I talk about hormones and the menstrual cycle per se, and I share with women the fact that I was fasting a lot at a certain period, and I recognized that the fasting at the beginning of the month started to fall in alignment with my cycle. So, and normally everybody was like, don't fast when you're on your cycle. You can't do it. Your body doesn't have what it needs. It's going to deplete this and da 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 da. And I was like, I don't know what y'all talking about, but fasting to me is like everything. So, and then of course you challenge me, I'm going to challenge myself. And I recognized that through that process of fasting in either at the same time of your cycle or right before your cycle, it completely changes the way that your body processes the whole menstrual cycle process. So in the book, I tell, young women and females, if you have very difficult periods, which a lot of women who don't eat healthy do, if you got a lot heavy cramps, very, very, very heavy flow. And pardon me, brother, because I know this is, you know what I mean? You're a man, but you got
It's
women
all
in your
good.
life.
It's all
Okay,
good.
good. Beautiful. Because this is the science of self. If you eat processed foods, fast foods continuously, all of these things affect the amount of toxins that your body has to process during the menstrual cycle, let alone the emotional chaos that happens in a woman's body when all of those hormones are fluctuating and her body is trying to like process and purge. So the quality of your diet 1000% impacts the way the heaviness of your cycle, the amount of cramps you have, the length of your cycle, right? And now when I look back, when I was in high school, I had friends who were taking birth control and who would bleed, pardon the language, for months at a time. Your cycle's only supposed to be like 2 days. When I was fasting, the 2 day, no issues, just smooth sailing. But I had friends who were on birth control who were bleeding for months, and they were going to the doctor, and the doctor was just changing the prescription of the birth control pills and giving them a new prescription, and it was still happening. So like a year and a half, you going through fluctuating all these different pills. It's affecting your hormones. It's affecting everything. And so I have a friend who got a hysterectomy. And then I come to find out when I fast forward and I'm doing all this research and whatnot, that bentonite clay, calcium grade, food grade A bentonite clay, can like literally go in and completely flush your entire system out, let alone if you have fibroids and tumors. I know there's a lot of people with remedies to fibroids and tumors, and I'm all for it. There's herbs, but I guarantee you, because I've walked several clients through this, if you use food grade calcium bentonite clay, you can heal yourself from fibroids and tumors on your own. You don't have to pay a doctor. So that's just that. But if you're eating Fritos and hot Doritos, which have red dye in them, right? None of it's real. None of that comes from the earth. Those chips aren't real, right? So if you're eating a specific type of diet, drinking soda, and all this stuff, this processed food, it is affecting your ability to control your emotions. It's affecting your ability to be still. A lot of the kids that are in these schools that are getting diagnosed with ADHD and autism, or being on the spectrum, is directly tied to the way that they eat. A lot of their parents need to put them on a vegan diet. People don't want to hear that. The eczema, you got babies with eczema all in their face and all in their skin. Take them off of dairy, and watch and see what happens. Dairy, Dr. Sebi said that mucus was the root of all disease, right? I totally agree with that. I just say it in a different way because I understand now the correlation between breath and the breathing process of cleaning your oxygen, right? When you are in touch with your breath and you breathe in a healthy way consistently, you are consistently purging toxins out of your body and out of your bloodstream just through your breath, right? And so having clean blood, having your blood flowing consistently through your body, is how you clear up mucus. Mucus means oxygen is stuck. Mucus means energy is stuck. It gets coagulated or confined in certain spaces in the body. So yes, mucus is about diet, but then mucus on another level is also about breathing and having a proper breath regimen and using that to, circulate that blood in the body, etc. So I know I'm nerding out here. I have a tendency to do that, but the hormones for girls and women in particular, but then for men, men's hormones fluctuate consistently on a day-to-day basis. Women, it happens once a month. Men, it's consistent on a day-to-day basis, right? And so how you eat, I say how your frequency or your vibration is how you eat, how you think, how you eat, how you feel, how you think, how you live, and how you breathe. All four of those elements, right? And so there's no way that you can be a high functioning, high vibrational, emotional being if you are putting trash in your body. The whole system is connected. In Keys to Womanhood, I show the 7 glands, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, the sexual gland, the adrenal, right? All these glands. And if one is depleted, then the other glands have to pull energy and resources from the others. So if you're out here promiscuous, wilding out, brothers and sisters, I know you guys don't like to hear this. I always get so much flack talking about sexual discipline. I never understood why. But if you are consistently leaking your life force energy, which is what your sexual energy is, how could you possibly be a high vibrational, emotional, well-off being? So it's all connected. The way you eat affects how you feel. The way you feel affects how you eat. The way you feel affects your energy. The way if you feel connected to source and to Mother Nature and you have love around you, physical touch is one of the most liberating and freeing things. Getting a hug is a very powerful thing. Parents, if you got children, hug your babies. I said children's. Hug your children. Hug your spouse. Hug your neighbors if y'all cool. You know what I mean? Not on no weird stuff, but I'm just saying, So it's all connected. The physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of ourselves. And most of us are operating on like one or two of those planes. Most of us are physically focused because we have to be, right, and mentally focused because we got jobs and we got to get up and like move forward, and we got to, problems to solve and whatnot. So we're mentally focused, but we're not spiritually focused, and we're not emotionally focused. And emotions in Black culture get such a bad rap. I hate, 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 hate the way we talk about emotions. Oh, you're being too emotional. Okay, but what if my emotion is love? Right? Bruce Lipton wrote a book called The Honeymoon Effect. He said when a person is in love, that is one of the most powerful, high vibrational, energetic resonances in the universe. So when you say you're being too emotional, we need to clean that up. No, you're operating in the lower nature of your emotions. When you're operating from your higher self in an emotional capacity, that's when, in the Bible it says, you can create. It says it in different words, but basically that idea of being able to create at will, being it is, right? That's what the love frequency is. When you're in the love frequency, you can actually say be, and it is, and miracles will unfold, and great, in a twinkling of an eye. So it's all interconnected. Somebody asked me in my live a couple of weeks ago, what would you tell a how would you tell a person who is dealing with trauma? What would you tell them in order to be able to meditate? Because they're struggling with meditation and they're dealing with a lot of trauma. Stop trying to meditate. we're skipping a step here, right? First of all, what are you eating? Because if you're eating food that makes you unable to sit still for 20 minutes, we're wasting our time, right? Go for a walk in nature. Take off your shoes and go sit in the grass or go sit in the sand, right? If meditation is not working, or, because then it's like everybody says this is what I'm supposed to do and it's not working. So now you got another thing to critique yourself over, and you are already dealing with trauma and shame and guilt and all of that stuff. We want to get off the trauma. We want to get off the heavy criticisms of ourselves, the judgment, the ridicule. We got to deal with those things before we can really start talking about meditation. So we want to put the cart before the horse. We don't want to do the real work, but the real work is sitting still, listening to yourself. How much negativity, and the other thing in the science of self, I think I said 60 to 65 to 70% of the average person's daily thinking is negative. 65 to 70% of the average person's conversation going on in their mind, they are criticizing themselves, they are judging themselves, they are talking, and parents, I always say this to parents, you would never let a person talk to your child like that, the way you talk to yourself. I've even had conversations with myself where I'm like, who is that? Why are you talking to me like that? So yeah, kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit. And if you don't know where to start with your diet. Eat more green, eat less and eat more green. No, you shouldn't be drinking regular milk. That's kind of pork. Oh my God, do we even need to talk about that, right? Eat less meat, eat more green, right? And sort of starting, and you'll see clarity start to come through. You'll see yourself starting to be more emotionally stable. I can't tell you how many women I've either worked with or observed that are batch crazy. They have no control over their emotions, okay? They're online wigging out. Why are you online crying and telling everybody about the worst moment in your life? Get off the internet. Nobody cares online. These people don't care about you. They just want to see a show, So yeah, it's all connected. The serotonin, the melatonin, the quality of your sleeping, your sexual energy, your sexual libido. I talked about the piezoelectric crystals in the pineal gland, and now I'm getting really nerdy here, but I'm going to stop after I say this. A lot of people are walking around with calcified pineal glands. The pineal gland is what the ancient ones called the seat of the soul. If your pineal gland is calcified, are you really connected to anything? And then we wonder why we walking around looking at people like, do this dude got a soul? Is this an NPC or an actual human being? These are the times that we're living in. So I'm going to stop there. Hopefully I answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. Always. I love all the gems. We love some good nerding out over here. We love science. We love scholarship. So you're in the right place with that, right? So let's talk about the law of attraction. Most times, the law of attraction is spoken about all the positive attributes of it, right? But what happens when a person hyper focuses on what's wrong in their life? Like you were saying a little while ago, some people you talk to every time is negative self-talk, is what the problem is in their life. They're never talking about anything positive. What's the ramifications of doing that when it comes to attracting more bad to yourself?
You know what's interesting about that? One of my members, it was probably like more than a year ago, I do a ongoing series called Ask Me Anything. And one of my members asked me, does the law of attraction work for African people? And the question was jarring. And I can understand why a person would ask that question. Think about Black people accepting this idea that we are a cursed people from the Bible. Kendrick Lamar has that one in one of his songs. His uncle called him and was leaving a message on a voicemail. And he was dropping jewels, right? But he was like basically saying we are a cursed people and alluding to the scripture references that identify us as a cursed people. Now imagine if on an individual level, if you grow up as a child, remember, let's say Boys in the Hood, right? What was his name? I was about to say Day Day.
Who, Doughboy?
What was I? Huh?
Doughboy? That's you?
Doughboy. Exactly. So remember, Doughboy grew up in a house with his mother telling him he wasn't going to ever be anything. What happened to Doughboy? He fulfilled the prophecy. Okay. On Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character was raised in a household with a intelligent mother, and then with a father who was steering him, okay, in immersing him in knowledge and books and self-esteem and taking him outside of the hood and experiencing other things, right? So the incubator is, and what people pour into you or don't pour into you establishes how you see yourself. So now you walking out into the world with an open wound. Yes, Doughboy, thank you. Writing by Winfred. You walking out into the world with an open wound, radiating the void. What's the void? Lack of love. What's the void? Lack of lap time with your mother. Lack of breastfeeding. That's another aspect of, about what we just talked about, right? And so that dynamic on an individual level, but then you take the hood, you take a ghetto where you can magnify that times 1,000, right? Jay-Z said, you know why they call a project? Because it's a project. It's a project. It was intentionally set up like this. And then they put the liquor and the alcohol and the crack and the heroin and the, right, et cetera, et cetera. We could go on for days about that. And so now you're getting hit at all angles, right? But I know through raising my son, not having been raised by my mother, life raised me. My father was very involved in my life to a certain degree up until like the 6th grade. And then after the 6th grade, he had a son, and it was like this big separation that happened. And I was kind of like out, I was on my own in terms of like trying to figure life out. But so I didn't have a blueprint, in terms of parenting, but I knew what I lacked. And so because I knew what I lacked, I transmuted that experience in how I raised my son. And then most importantly, and I've said this in several videos recently, I didn't realize this until my son became a young man. He's 22 now. I was working on myself his whole entire life. I was vegan his whole life. I was fasting his whole life. I was writing books his whole life. I've written 7 books. He was born in 2013. No, he wasn't born. He was 2003. I've written 7 books since he's been born, right? I've been working on myself consistently as a mother to my son the whole entire time. That was also raising my son. Not just what I said to him, not just how I disciplined him, not just, the times when I should have done this or I did this wrong, like all that stuff that we measure ourselves by as parents. The fact that I was consistently working on myself and trying to be better was raising my son. Now that's a whole nother level of alchemy. I'm going to talk about that in my event in LA on Saturday, September 13th. I should have said that in the beginning, but I want to make sure your listeners, as well as my listeners, remember I do have an event at Soul Folks in LA in Leimert Park, Saturday, September 13th. And this is one of the things that I'm going to be talking about, this energetic resonance and how we're engaging and downloading information from one another consistently based on what's happening within, right? And so going back to the negative the negative self-talk. What did Doughboy's mother say to him? You ain't, your daddy wasn't, you ain't gonna never be. If you believe that, the belief is the power. If you believe you can do anything, a la Serena and Venus, right? I don't know how well their father did, what their parents did with them in terms of all the other stuff, right? Because I don't know why Serena right now is promoted. There's something going on with her, right? That's a whole nother conversation. But in terms of instilling in them that they could be the best in the world, they believed it. Yeah, they trained. Yes, they were disciplined. But do you know how many people train? How many from the age of 5 in tennis or basketball or football and never actually get to the higher heights, right? They believed it. The same way I say a crystal is just a rock, unless you actually believe that it is a powerful substance that came from the earth that has these healing properties that if you use it in the right way can help you to, grow and expand, etc., etc. So the belief factor is everything. So if you have a continuity of negative self-talk, of focusing on what's wrong, right, all of those things, then that's the work. You have to observe what's going on in your mind and don't immediately try to be like, okay, 70% of my thoughts every day are pop negative. I'm going to focus on 70% of my thoughts being positive every day. It doesn't work. That's not how it works. The first stage is observe. Just observe. Don't try to change it. Don't try to replace the language. Just observe what's happening in your mind and start to ask yourself, who is saying this? Because a lot of times that's my mother. That's my uncle. That's that teacher from the 3rd grade. Remember Malcolm X? A teacher, one of his teachers put a bug in his mind and he ended up being a pimp. Now, we could say a lot of stuff happened in between. Yeah, but could we, pinpoint that point and kind of see where he started to veer off on another path? Absolutely. We can see that in all of the school systems, especially when it comes to Black children and Black boys in particular, because they're constantly trying to remind you that you are not this, that you can't do this, that you can't do that, because subconsciously they know that if you believe in yourself, there's nothing that you can't do. So stepping outside and observing how you're talking to yourself is the first thing. Do that for like 3 or 4 days. Then start to write down the continuous things, right? Because there's a pattern of continuous things that we say to ourselves. Write down the patterns. And one of the patterns could be, one of my voids because of my family dynamic was lack of support, right? So I go out into the world in the Black community and what do I run into? Lack of support. Right. And so I'm in my mind, I've constantly had to battle this like, oh, they're never going to support you. They don't buy books. They don't all that stuff, which the world is reiterating. Right. And so being mindful that I'm on a hamster wheel in my mind, that this is a program that's repeating itself. Right. Oh, no, I got to get off this hamster wheel. Right. And so now I recognize myself on the hamster wheel. So when I start to see myself on it, I acknowledge that. And now I got to switch gears. So the observer perspective, which is powerful because I'm not going to say that, but yeah. So the law of attraction, going back to the question about does the law of attraction work for African people? We would ask that question because all we see is suffering, right? We would ask that question because what is it now? 1/3 of our men during a certain age range are incarcerated, right? I remember a friend of mine went to Santa Rita. She was going there to counsel. She was a social worker and she was doing some work in the jail. And I'm from Oakland, so Santa Rita's right up the street. It's where everybody I know eventually ended up that were in the streets. And she said it blew her mind how many Black men, young Black men, handsome Black men, fine Black men, the ones that kind of make you stop and have to catch your breath. She said there was so she it just blew her mind how many black men were incarcerated, right? So how does that happen on a major scale? Yes, it's the prisoner pipeline industrial complex. Yes, it's the we talked about the lead, we talked about the aluminum, we talked about the fluoride in the water and all that stuff. The fluoride calcifies the pineal gland. It's all of that. But we still have beacons of light that go through all of those things and still come out on the other end. How? Why? Because something happened. Maybe they heard of Zaza Ali. Maybe they read Naeem Akbar's work. Maybe they read Message to the Black Man. Maybe they read the autobiography of Malcolm X, Assata Shakur, right? Maybe they saw a movie, The Life of Pi, right? There's so much powerful information and things that you can gravitate towards to help you pull you out of a dark space and into the light, right? How did they get it and the others didn't? It's the belief. So the law of attraction is always working. And I don't like when I hear people say, how do you get the law of attraction to work for you? You know, that's a selling point now for workshops and for content and for books. How do you get the law of attraction to work for you? That's so disingenuous because the law of attraction is always working. How you think, how you feel, how you eat, how you live, and how you breathe is what is attracting situations, circumstances, and people to you. It is not personal, right? We say you're waiting on God and God is waiting on you. Yeah, because God is waiting on you to change your diet, to change your mind, to change the way you're living, to raise your vibration so that you can attract a better quality of life experience. But until you do that, if you're praying in desperation, right, you're going to get back a desperate answer. You praying for a man because you think there aren't any good black men out here. Guess what? You're gonna meet all of the worst, right, representations of that are going to come towards you, not because that's what you asked for, but because that's what you actually expect. We are that powerful. And that's the schism or the difficulty factor, because and I keep saying this, if it's not about your personal power, what's the point? Whoever's watching this interview, we're at an hour now, a little past an hour now. You're listening, it's wonderful, we vibing, we're talking about all this stuff, but if it doesn't impact your personal power, what is the point? That's why I wrote workbooks, because I was like, okay, I can write books, but is this impacting people's personal power, or is it just informing them, So the law of attraction is always working. You don't have to get it to work for you. You do have to fine tune your frequency so that it works to bring to you and manifest what you want and not the things that you don't want. The universe never says no. It's all yeses. You hate men? Okay. Here's more experiences to tell. You hate men, and so you become a lesbian, and now you run into lesbians who act like the men that you hated. It's always working. No disrespect. Don't get in your feelings. But I said what I said, and vice versa, right? People get you say certain things. I don't care. But so it's always working. So if you are in a spiral of negative thinking, negative self-talk, don't try to jump off the wheel. That's not how it works. If you have 20 or 30 or 40 years of negative self-talk and negative conditioning, it's going to take time. Go walk every day for 30 minutes. Start there. And while you're walking, listen to something that will raise raise your spirits, change the dichotomy of how you're thinking and how you're talking to yourself. And then, just slowly take steps day by day in order to get out of that. But you have to be conscientious that it's a thing. That's why I said self-awareness is everything. A lot of people that are in that loop, that 65 to 70% of negative self-talk, have no idea they're in the loop.
So, and you know what? I would say that this interview is the ultimate real example of manifestation and law of attraction, because, I thought about it last night. I've been following your work like 15 years or so. When I first came to quote unquote conscious community and coming around certain platforms, I was seeing you on other platforms way back then. I was reading the books and sharing the books a long time ago. So like, when you first came on the screen this afternoon, it was like, here we are. Like, this has all been lined up for a long time. Before you said yes, it was already on a certain path. So
you summoned me. You summoned me. You summoned me. That's how I was with Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. I was like, yeah, I'm going to meet her. And then I met her, and then I met her again. And it was like, yeah, this is, I was looking for women. Again, my mother didn't raise me, so I was looking for women that I could identify with that set a standard in a bar. I didn't have women around me that I was like impressed by. Not, professional women and stuff like that. I don't mean it like that, but just when I saw her, when I saw Tainetta Muhammad and read her book, the number 19, it's not the exact number, but like seeing these women that represented intellectualism and intelligence. And, when she debated William Shockey and how she just like, she checked him so thoroughly, but she did it without emotion. She didn't raise her voice. She had her facts. She had her data. She had her information. I was like, that's it. That's it right there, and so I manifested that experience with her. And now here we are having this conversation and opening up minds at the same time, and you obviously have created a platform with that exact intention. So it makes sense that we would connect and be aligned because that's my intention as well,
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. So at the end of Science itself, toward the bottom of it, you mentioned plans to have volume 2, volume 3, and also the keys of manhood. Do you still plan on creating and releasing those projects? We need that manhood book back.
That's a great question. And actually, I was thinking the other day because I have a climbing the ladder of yourself workshop that I do with women, and I was like, I wonder if I did. Most of my followers on YouTube are men. It's an interesting thing. 65% of my followers are men. But I was thinking, I wonder if I did a climbing the ladder of yourself male version, if men would show up. Because I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about this. And he said, it's interesting that if you go into church, the majority of people in the church are women. But when he would go to like the conscious, events we talking about when the conscious community was in its prime, the majority of people in there would be men, right? And so men being more intellectually focused, so to speak. I don't want to make that a blanket statement, but I think, we're in agreement on that. Yeah, I just had a whole conversation about this, right? And so, yes, I still want to do keys to manhood. I'm obviously going to have to like really tap in with some of my brothers to get the inside track on that, because I'm not just going to write a book as a woman and say I know everything. Like, nah, I need to check in with the brothers and like actually get real-time research. I don't know, because I have decided through all the controversy about history, and it's a lot of anti-Black sentiment in this country right now, and even beyond this country, but attack on our history, attack on our, our legacy and whatnot. So I've decided that my next textbook is going to be Black Legacy, 100 years of Black history in America, right? I'm going to do that, but then I also want to write Black Matters Volume 3, The Gods Are at War. And Volume 3 would close out the trilogy. Originally, it was supposed to be lifting the veil on racism, white supremacy. But I'm so past the concept of white supremacy. I am not writing a book or doing anything that has anything to do with this concept of white supremacy, because I beg your pardon. But The Gods Are at War would basically from 2020 to 2025 really like go in on what happened then, and bringing that into the fruition of where we are now in this spiritual warfare aspect. Those are like the two things that are at the forefront of my mind. So I can't even say, I didn't even plan on writing a textbook now. This is kind of where the path led me. I was like, once I finished Keys to Womanhood, my next book was going to be, what was it going to be? I don't even remember at this point, because I changed it up in the backs of my book. Let me see, actually. I think maybe it was Keys to Manhood. No, that's not it. I think it was The Science of Self, maybe Volume 2. I don't know. I have so much.
Hey, sister.
Yes.
Know what it remind me of? I'm in Louisiana. The old school Masterpiece CDs. Open a CD and it said coming soon. There's certain people and certain albums just never came out. You were like, wait a minute, what happened to so and so?
I know, and even when I look at this now and see like it does say keys to manhood, what every man should know. I said the science of self, volume 3, the soul. Well, no, the science of self, volume 2, body. The science of self, volume 3, soul. I even want to write a book, write an actual book, not a workbook. I don't know. I can't even say. I don't know. It depends on where my spirit takes me, But eventually, I'm going to get them all done. All these books really is creating the curriculum for, a school eventually, and higher institutions of learning. That's the goal.
I have like one more question for you before I conclude my time with Zaza Ali. So you are part of the award-winning documentary, Elementary Genocide. I love that series. I'm always telling people about that series, volume 1, 2, and 3. So my question is, that was years ago. In today's time, we see in the schools right now the book bans, curriculum under attack. We seeing some of the lowest rates in literacy and math and scores and history. From your perspective, how is education right now? What does it reveal? How do we prepare our children to raise above what's happening in education right now in this current administration?
If you can afford to, I would put my child in a private school if homeschooling is not available. There's African center schools all over this country. Every major city has a black school in it. You want to, as this controversy is happening, I'm like, why aren't y'all just supporting the schools that are already built? There's every city in this country has a black school, right? So that would be my first goal, to try to put my child in a place where the knowledge of self is being stimulated, as well as a high bar curriculum. Ancient people is, I says age 13 and up, but it's a high bar for a 13-year-old, right? So there's words in there that you might not be able to read, but you need to have a dictionary next to you and start looking these words up as you're reading, so that you can understand and contextualize what it is that you're actually reading, right? um, I would not have my child in public school right now. There's just no way. I just and I know people have to do what they have to do. You got to work, I think communities, people who live in neighborhoods together, should start creating, pods, they call them, where, one parent teaches one day, another parent teaches another. Maybe one parent does English, one does the field trips and whatnot. If you have two or three or four or five like-minded parents, you guys can come together and pull the different resources from different places. I've taken care of history for you guys, right? So there you go. But you can pull the resources, go to Barnes and Nobles and buy the math workbooks and the language arts workbooks and the spelling workbooks, right? You can figure it out, but you got to decide, and you have to be intentional. Any vetting tips for the schools? I mean, I would go and sit in the classes. My son went to Quilombo, which was an African Center School in Atlanta, which was a really good experience for him. And I just went and sat in the school because it was a lot of money. So it was an investment. I just went and sat in the classes and just observed, right? Talk to the teachers, look for online ratings. Obviously, everything is kind of online. Ask, sit outside the classes. I mean, outside the school, and talk to the parents that are coming out and ask them what they like and what they don't like, and the cost factor, and are they taking care of supplies? Are you going to have to be a parent that takes care of everything? Because a lot of our schools are financially struggling, so the parents end up having to to fill the gap, so to speak. Those are things you need to know beforehand, so that you're prepared for that, and maybe you can help in a way that will sort of cut some of the slack for the school. But I definitely think those are some of the ways that you can vet, and look at the textbooks. I'm a stickler for textbooks. I was on their head when I was in college. Like, what? So look at the textbooks and identify what the curriculums are based around that they're teaching these children. I think those are definitely good ways to sort of start out with that process. But homeschooling, for sure, if you're financially in a position, And if you're not financially in a position, but you got family, how much does it cost for the year? Okay, well then get your crowdfunding up, right? Start saving your money. But we got to be intentional about this. It's not something you can just be like, oh, I can't deal with this right now. Nah, we have to be intentional about what we pour into our children and the type of human beings that we want them to become. I wanted my son is a brilliant writer, but I could not he didn't like reading. He was like a cocky, sport athlete, basketball. And I was like, read this, read this, read this. And he was like, eh. And now he's buying his own books. He's buying the books that I was talking about when he was 12 and 14 and 15. He's buying them on his own now, right? So as a parent, you set the standard, because I was always reading, I was always researching, I was always writing a book. So he knows the bar for knowledge is high in our household. But I was setting a standard for him in my goals and quests for knowledge that he eventually, follows suit in. And I didn't have to force it. Don't try to force your children to be you. It don't work. It does not work. You can't force them to do anything. What you can do is create a model and be a light and be a shining example, and then they will gravitate towards it in their own time. Mr. LA said they got my child on the play-based learning curriculum, and now they are trying to, China's just a city in China just mandated AI to teach all of the schools, right? So now we have the AI element and then the homeschooling element, and I'm not against AI. I take Spanish on Duolingo, and I know for a fact that AI is like studying my progress and then creating my, my examples and my exams and things that I'm doing based on the level that I'm progressing at, right? And it's good, because don't keep me at third grade if I'm in the ninth grade, right? So it is good that the algorithm is paying attention and can kind of, fast track you if you need to be fast tracked. But there is another element of learning and teaching that requires compassion, that requires connection, that requires looking somebody in the eye. I remember Oprah Winfrey said, every child wants to see your face light up when they walk in the room. That's validation. What are our children going to do if they walk in the room and it's just a computer sitting there? So it's the mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical. Again, children need to be outside in nature. They need to be running around, putting their fingers in dirt, learning about botany, learning about, plants, learning about how, the sun gazing and all that type of stuff. Imagine if I would have been learning that when I was in the 5th grade. I'd be a super nerd now, right? Not that I need that or need any more inspiration, but yeah, thinking outside the box. I always told my son, I want you to be a good human being. That's my primary focus. Smart, he was always very, very smart. Charismatic, confident, he had all that stuff. But I always consistently reminded him, my job is to make sure that you are a good human being. The schools are supposed to be teaching our children how to be good human beings, not just how to do math, not just life skills. And they've taken a lot of the life skills out of the schools, right? The cooking classes and all of that type of stuff. Okay, so they took the cooking classes out. So now why we can't have one of the neighborhood aunties have a cooking class for all the neighborhood children on the weekend once a week? That seems like a very doable thing. All the parents pitch in. This idea just came to me. Okay, all the parents in the neighborhood pitch in. You got that one auntie that love the kids, that all the kids love her. Everybody always at her house. Put a couple of $100s in her hands. Let her go to the grocery store. Teach them children how to cook macaroni and cheese and spaghetti and all, the basic things. Eggs, how to make eggs, how to cook rice, right? So thinking outside the box in terms of how we teach our children is critical, because they're trying to streamline them into the digital realm. And I'm not mad at the technology, but the full human experience is very limited in a technical world. It's a very limited space for the full human experience, right? There's no touch. There's no eye to eye. There's no hugging. There's no compassion. There's no, okay, you might be a C student, right? But everybody in the class respects you. You're a leader in the classroom. You get consistent C's, but All the other children in the class listen when you talk. Or you're funny and you're charming and you have a way with words, or you have a way with people, right? These are attributes of human beings that go well beyond the digital realm and artificial intelligence and whatnot. So while everybody is like, go AI, go digital, everybody needs to learn coding, all of that, I'm like, nah, I want you to be a good person. That's number one modus operandi. And then underneath that, you got a propensity for math. All right, cool. Let's get heavy into math. You got a propensity for writing. All right, cool. Let's get heavy into writing. You have a scientific mind. Let's get heavy into the science. So you have to know your children too. You have to listen to them. You have to nurture their natural talents and not streamline them to be what living vicariously through you. You wanted to be a college superstar athlete and you never made it. And so now you're forcing your son to play basketball and all he really wants to do is read books all day. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that story in different ways, right? So yeah, I think those are some ways and some, and like you use the Science of Self workbook. And I have the brother I know at Marcus Garvey School, his same class, we also did a fundraiser and got 10 books for his class of the Science of Self. So he's teaching the curriculum of the Science of Self to fifth graders. Okay? So when he asked me that, and he asked for my permission, and I was like, of course. And then I was like, wait a minute. So he was only going to use the one book. I'm like, well, hold on. This is the community's, this is our responsibility. You don't have the books. We can get 10 books together. My membership channel, my members in my membership put the money, or one of my members actually did pay for the whole thing, but we got to think outside the box. Keys to Womanhood is there's a lot of content in this workbook specifically for young girls, social media, your menstrual cycle, how to, like what's actually happening in your body, not just you bleed for a few days a week, but no, what's actually happening in your body. You know how many women don't even know? They don't even know the process that the egg goes through and what your physical body is doing every month in order to prepare you to have a child. Why is your body preparing you every month to have a child? What is God telling you? While we out here asking, what is a woman? What is a man? Stop playing with me. Okay? So, those are just some ideas to answer your question directly.
And back to using your Science of Self in the classroom, you better believe the college gave me a curriculum to use, but I had the standards every week. But I was like, what our ancestors did in the late 1800s with the Carter G. Woodson, the Negro journals, like, look, I got the schoolwork right here on top of the desk, but I got the Carter G. Woodson book on my lap. I'm teaching y'all from here. Whenever they walk by the administration, we're going back to this. Whenever they leave, we're going back to this in my lap. We're going back to, so it's like the almost,
that's the spook that sat by the door vibes.
Yeah. And they loved it. They ate it up. And matter of fact, people was dropping their other classes to come and join my class. They weren't even a major that they needed, but they wanted to be in Mr. Sean class because they was hearing about it. People was talking about it. Like, man, you got to go to Mr. Sean class. I mean,
a lot of that has to do with you too, right? And then the low representation of Black men in the classrooms, right? There's that element, and then having teachers that actually care. I remember my teachers that cared. I remember 1,000% my teachers that cared, and it was probably like 15% out of all of them. The ones who didn't care, I don't remember any of them. I can't tell you their names, I can't tell you the experiences, but the ones that cared really, really stand out. So it's that, and then it's also your energetic and vibrational resonance, that magnetism, going back to Joseph Campbell, right? You got the je ne sais quoi, you know what I mean? And so our children want to be a part of that. Yeah, that's what it is. That's that light.
So, Sister Zaza, I thank you very, very much for blessing my wonderful platform. Anybody watching it in the future, man, definitely thank y'all for tuning in and watching. Leave comments. Always answer the comments back. Tell them where they can find you. You have online coaching. You have one-on-one coaching. You have health, wellness, yoga, materials. Tell them where they can find it.
Everything can be found through my website, zazaali.com. And just again, a reminder, I'm speaking live. This is my first live lecture. And I used to shy away from the word lecture because it sounds so like, who wants to go to a lecture, right? So like for a whole time, I was like, I'm not using that word. I need to find something else. And now I'm like, no, I'm back on my lecture square. I'm back in my teaching bag, right? And so I'm very excited about this lecture presentation because it's I think this is going to be my best so far, because of what I'm focusing on. And so we got the micro, which is us as individuals and our personal power, and then we got the macro in terms of the God aspect, what's happening in the world, and how we can fortify and prepare ourselves to thrive and not survive. Right? No disaster preparedness. We want to be sovereign prepared, right? The language, disaster preparedness, emergency preparedness, that language is a frequency, right? So I don't use that language. Now, if we talk about being sovereignty minded, being sovereign in all of our affairs, I can get with that, right? So, yeah, I have my books. I have the event on in Leimert Park too, in LA, Black LA, and you can get all that information on my website. Consultations. Well, I don't do consultations anymore, but that's a side note. Climbing the ladder of yourself. All my stuff, everything that I have going on, you can find it through my website. And thank you so much for following up with me, for following my work, for using my work in the capacity that you have. I really, really, really cannot tell you how much that means to me, because I carry a lot of weight because you don't really know if it's all working. You know, a lot of this work that I do, I don't get paid for. You know what I mean? It's my soul work. It's my life work. You know that the most important work that you do, the people don't really respect like they should, or it's not cost effective or whatever. So when you tell me that, using my book for your thesis, using my books in your class, it means everything to me, and I really, 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 really mean that. That brings my heart so much joy, and it really inspires me. Even you bringing up keys to manhood, it's like now in my brain, I'm like, maybe I can squeeze that in the next year. Yes,
Can I say something? I
yes.
tell my friends all the time, my female friends, that everywhere I look, I see women conferences and women empowerment and all these things. But it's like, unless you're a part of a certain kind of church or you're a part of a fraternity, I don't see as many guy events on a regular basis when it comes to men's mental health, a space for a man to just go and tap into other guys. Like, I don't drink and I don't smoke, right? My personal choice. I don't want to go to a cigar bar and sit around and smoke all day. I don't want to go to a nightclub and be around. That's the main ways that guys get along and sit and talk and chop it up. If I'm not one of those kind of people, it's like, where do a guy like myself go to get around other guys that's like-minded, talk about family, relationship, your struggles, grief, depression, anxiety, whatever it might be? There's not as many spaces I find for guys. So that's why I'm asking that question.
And I'm glad you asked that. I'm glad you said that for a couple of reasons. Because one of the things that I want to do is teach go around the country and have like 50 girls come and do a full day workshop with them centered around keys to womanhood. And I always said I want to do the same thing for boys, right? And obviously, because I feel like our sons need to have women that play that role, not just our sons but our men. Like, if I'm constantly saying, a man who refuses to learn from a woman is a fool, a woman with nothing to teach him even more so, and this is a fact, right? So then I recognize my role in teaching men. I've known it for a long time, especially when I found out my after it took me like 8 years to look at the demographics. I had been on YouTube for like 8 years, and it blew me away that the majority of my followers were men, right? And I'm a woman, and maybe there's some physical attraction there, even though you see what you see now, right? I'm not trying to pull you in sexually. I'm not trying to pull you in any sort of lower nature type way. I'm trying to pull you in with knowledge and information. But I have recognized, because through all of those things, that I do have a role and a responsibility in that regard. So you just put that back on my mind. You kind of just answered a question for me when I was thinking about the climbing the ladder of yourself, but the male version. And you also have reminded me how important it is to create substantive content for our sons and for men. And ancient people, this is relative. 3 of the chapters are on queens, and I emphasize women because women have been totally taken out of history. So I wanted to bring these women to the forefront. But then the 2 chapters that are very male dominant it's warrior energy, right? So you got the Moors in Spain. That's an 800-year timeline. not just the warrior energy, but science, math, astronomy, right? Builders, architecture, right? So this is powerful, powerful black men, African men, dark black Arab men, right? Doing major things in the world. And then you've got the Africans in Asia, you got the samurai and Sakanuye no Tamurumaro, and how his family came from his the men in his family were mercenaries, but then they were also administrators of the court, right? So you got the fighting aspect, but then you also got intellectuals that were in the community, like helping to solve problems and helping to create governments and political systems and whatnot. So the book is very intentionally balanced with the male, female, masculine, feminine, warrior, queen. Those two dynamics were very important and intentional to me. So that for now, with the science of sex, all the workbooks, but that for now is my contribution to our sons and to men in that regard in terms of what we're talking about. But now you have reminded me of something that I know I had the intention, because I just looked at it in the book, right? This is something that I need to do. And this is something that I will do.
Man, thank you very, very much. With that, don't leave right quick, my sister. For the audience watching this and watching it later, thank y'all very much for coming to the Griot podcast. There will be another guest next Tuesday on eugenics, talking about eugenics next Tuesday. So the shows are coming. If you're first time watching it, subscribe, hit the bell, get notified. Thank y'all very much. And we out. Peace.
Peace and love.
All right, I'm ending the live.